You look up and there is a face in the tree, 30 feet above you, tucked into the fork where a thick branch meets the trunk. Dark fur, forward-facing eyes that do not blink for a second too long. A flat nose that does not belong to any animal you can name. The face is small, smaller than yours, and it is looking down at you with the casual curiosity of something that does not think it is in any danger. Your hand goes to your phone before your brain catches up. You hit record. Your fingers shake so badly the framing drifts off center. Do not try to keep filming. You do not try to get closer. You back away from the tree one careful step at a time because some primitive thing inside you has already figured out that if there is a baby in front of you, the mother is behind you. You never see her. You feel her the entire 2-mile walk back to the trailhead. You feel her in the truck. You feel her at the kitchen table that night while you stare at the clip on your phone and decide whether to post it. You do post it. 9:47 on a Sunday night on a small hiking forum where a few hundred people know your username. 4 sentences, 1 short clip. You go to bed. The next morning you log in once to read the replies. You do not answer any of them. By the 3rd day, the post is gone. You never log back in again.
I'm Alex, and this is the story of a man claiming he's had an encounter with a Bigfoot infant. Or at least he was claiming 3 months ago on a Reddit forum. Today, he's a ghost, and this is the footage he left behind.
I want to be clear about how this came to me because it changes how you should hear the rest of this video. I find a lot of Bigfoot material online. Most of it is garbage. Costumes, blurry videos of branches in wind, the same 15 seconds of footage that gets recycled across 6 different YouTube channels with 6 different first time on the internet overlays. I've gotten very good at scrolling past the obvious fakes, and I've gotten very good at recognizing when something feels different. This one felt different the moment I saw it. Not because the footage is the clearest Bigfoot video ever recorded, it isn't. There are branches in the way, the light is dappled, the face is partly hidden. If you wanted to dismiss this as a bear cub or a shadow or pareidolia, you could do it in about 10 seconds, and most of the people who replied to the original post did exactly that. What got my attention wasn't the footage, it was the silence around it. The post went up on a small hiking subforum, the kind of place that gets maybe 300 active users on a good day. The original poster had a username that was forgettable, something pine-themed, mountain-themed, the kind of handle a guy in his 30s picks when he signs up for a hiking forum and isn't trying to be memorable. The account had a posting history going back about 2 years. Trip reports, gear questions, the occasional photo of his dog at a summit marker. Normal. He posted the Bigfoot footage at 9:47 on a Sunday night in early October. 4 sentences, 1 6-second clip. He logged in once the next morning to look at the replies. He never logged in again. I found it about a week after he posted it. By then, the thread had 30-something comments, most of them dismissive, a few of them sincere, and the original poster hadn't responded to any of them. People were asking him for the trail name. People were asking him for the time of day. People were asking him to go back, silence on all of it. I saved the footage to my hard drive the night I found it. I also screenshotted the thread, the post, his profile, and his last 3 trip reports from earlier in the year. I'm glad I did. 3 days after I saved everything, the post was gone. 2 weeks after that, his profile still existed but had no posts on it. Every trip report he'd ever made had been deleted. The account is technically still there. It hasn't logged in since the morning after he posted the footage. The username is still searchable. He is not. I sent him a private message about a week after the post disappeared. Polite, no pressure, just asking if he was willing to talk. The message has been sitting in his inbox unread for 3 months. I'm not going to share the full clip in this video for reasons I'll get to at the end. But I want to walk you through what I see in it, and I want you to look carefully at the still frames I'm pulling from it now, because I think you'll start seeing what I see. The clip is 6 seconds long. Wider than it is tall, the hiker is breathing audibly the entire time, the kind of fast, shallow breathing that happens when adrenaline has just hit and the body hasn't caught up with what the eyes are seeing. The camera shakes throughout. The framing drifts slightly to the right across the duration. He never adjusts, he never recenters. He just holds the phone up and lets it run. 2 pine trunks dominate the frame. A larger one on the right that's probably a ponderosa, smaller scaly bark, and a younger fir on the left with darker, more textured bark. The 2 trunks grow close together, maybe 4 or 5 feet apart at the height where the subject is sitting. The subject is between the trunks, slightly recessed from the camera, tucked into a fork where a thick lateral branch meets the right trunk. Estimated height in the tree based on canopy comparison is somewhere between 25 and 30 feet off the ground. The face is dark furred, almost black, with what looks like a slightly lighter band across the brow that could just be the way the light is hitting it. The eyes are forward facing. This matters more than people realize when they first see the footage. Bears have eyes set wider apart on the sides of their heads, even cubs. The eye placement here is primate. Not human exactly, but primate. The nose is flat, not a snout. There's no muzzle projection the way you'd see on any North American mammal of that size. The mouth is closed and stays closed for the full duration of the clip. The expression is not aggressive, the brow ridge is heavier than a chimp's, but lighter than what most adult Sasquatch reports describe. The size is the part that does the heavy lifting for me. If this is a creature at full canopy height in a mature ponderosa and we use the trunk diameter as a scale reference, the face we're looking at is roughly the size of a 6-year-old human child's face, maybe a little larger. That's not adult. That's not even adolescent. That's a young one. The body is mostly hidden. You can see a sliver of what looks like a forearm or upper shoulder behind the right trunk, dark furred, but the rest is obscured by branches and the trunk itself. The shoulder shifts once during the clip. A small adjustment, maybe an inch of movement, then stillness again. Whatever this thing is, it tucked itself into that fork deliberately. It wanted to be hidden. It chose that spot. Let me talk about what it's not, because that's where most of the dismissal comes from. It's not a bear cub. Black bear cubs do climb. They climb often. They do not, however, climb to 30 feet and sit motionless in a tree fork during midday. Cubs that high are almost always with their mother somewhere in the same tree, and you'd see the second animal. You'd also see the wrong proportions. Bear faces are longer, eye placement is wider, ears are larger and more prominent. None of that is in this footage. And bear cubs do not hold position the way this thing holds position. Cubs fidget. This doesn't. It's not a monkey. There are no wild monkey populations in Oregon. The closest non-human primates to Mount Hood National Forest are in a zoo about 30 miles to the west. And a zoo escape would have been on every news station within a day. It's not a costume, not at 30 feet up. Not on a tree fork that would require either a serious climb or a long rappel to access. Not for a 6-second clip posted on a hiking forum with 300 users. The math doesn't work. The effort to payoff ratio for a hoax this specific is so unbalanced that no rational hoaxer attempts it. And there's another problem with the costume theory specifically for footage. A costume mask doesn't have functioning eyes. The eyes in this clip move. Small movements, but real ones. It's not pareidolia. I've watched this footage frame by frame. The shadows resolve consistently across the duration. There are micro movements in the face, small shifts of the eyes, what looks like a single slow blink near the middle of the clip. The smallest possible adjustment of the head as the subject tracks the hiker below. Pareidolia happens in your brain, not in the recording. Pareidolia doesn't blink. I personally think what I'm seeing is a juvenile Sasquatch. I'm willing to be wrong about that, but I'm not willing to dismiss the footage on the casual grounds that most of the original thread used. 4 sentences, that's all he wrote. I'm not going to read them to you verbatim, both because I don't want to give the username any more identifiability than it already has, and because anyone who wants to find the original cached post can probably do it with enough effort. But I'll paraphrase them closely enough that you understand what he said. He said he'd been hiking that day off a trail in Mount Hood National Forest. He said he'd seen something in a tree at about 30 feet up. He said he'd recorded a few seconds of video. He said he didn't know what to think. 4 sentences. That's the whole post. I want you to notice what's not in those sentences. He didn't say Bigfoot. He didn't say Sasquatch. He didn't say cryptid. He used the word something. He didn't speculate. He didn't make a claim. He didn't ask anyone for help identifying it. He posted the clip and stepped back from the keyboard. That word choice is the part I keep coming back to. People who hoax Bigfoot footage do not write 4-sentence posts on small hiking forums. People who hoax Bigfoot footage write 1,000-word stories with embellishment, with specific details about smell and sound and pursuit, with the kind of dramatic flourish that earns engagement. This guy wrote 4 sentences and went to bed. The other tell is the venue. He didn't post this to a cryptid forum. He didn't post it to r/Bigfoot. He didn't post it to one of the dozen Sasquatch Facebook groups that would have eaten this footage alive. He posted it to a hiking forum where most of the regular users are people in their 30s and 40s who do day hikes in the Pacific Northwest and post-trip reports about elevation gain and trail conditions. He posted it to people who would respect him before they saw the clip, and most of whom would not respect him after. The replies reflect that. Most of the early responses were variations of "Are you serious? Did you doctor this? This is a joke, right?" A few of the later responses were more careful. People asking thoughtful questions about the location, the time of day, whether he'd heard anything. Those were the replies he didn't answer either. In my read, this is someone who recorded a few seconds of video, knew it was significant, posted it impulsively to a community he trusted, regretted it within hours, and ghosted before the conversation could pull him deeper than he wanted to go. That's a normal human reaction. The part that isn't normal is what happened to the post afterward and what didn't happen to the account. Let me give you the lay of the land, because the where matters here as much as the what. Mount Hood National Forest covers a little over 1 million acres in north-central Oregon. It runs from the Columbia River Gorge in the north down through the Cascade Crest, with the volcano itself sitting near the western edge and a sprawl of contiguous wilderness extending east into ponderosa pine country. The forest is one of the most visited in the country, 8 million recreational visits a year. But the visits are concentrated. Trailheads, campgrounds, the ski areas. Step a mile off any developed route, and you're in country that almost nobody walks. The Bigfoot history of the region is older than most people realize. The first newspaper reports of wild men in the Oregon Cascades date back to the 1880s. The Estacada area on the southwest flank of the forest has produced a steady stream of reports going back to the 1960s, including some that have been investigated by the BFRO and other organizations. The Clackamas River Corridor specifically is one of those places where reports cluster, not in a dramatic spike, but in the patient way that suggests a resident population rather than passing migration. Oregon as a whole sits in the top 5 U.S. states for documented Bigfoot reports, depending on whose database you trust. The Pacific Northwest as a region is, by any measure, the densest concentration of Sasquatch reports in the world. The Cascades form a single, uninterrupted wilderness corridor running from Northern California up into British Columbia. If you wanted to design a habitat for an intelligent, reclusive, large-bodied primate species, you would design something that looks almost exactly like the Cascades. There's also the indigenous layer. The Multnomah and Clackamas peoples, and further south the Malaya, have oral traditions describing large, hairy beings in the forests of this region that predate European contact by centuries. The names vary by language and band. The descriptions don't vary as much. A large, bipedal, intelligent forest dweller that is generally avoided and sometimes feared, and that has clear behavioral patterns including the protection of young. I personally think the location of this footage is one of the reasons I take it seriously. If you were going to fake a Bigfoot video for attention, you would not pick a small hiking forum with 300 users. You would also not pick an obscure, unnamed off-trail spot in a million-acre national forest. You'd pick somewhere famous. You'd pick somewhere people could go look. You'd want the fame, and you'd protect it by anchoring it to a landmark. This footage is anchored to nothing. The hiker didn't name his trail. He didn't drop GPS coordinates. He didn't tell anyone how to find the spot. He recorded 6 seconds of video, named the forest, and disappeared. That's not the behavior of someone seeking attention. That's the behavior of someone protecting a location.
That is the part that keeps me up at night. Because if he was protecting a location, he was protecting something at that location. And nobody protects a location for footage they do not believe is real.
I want to walk you through what I think his day looked like, based on everything I know about the post, the footage, and the kind of hiker he was based on his older trip reports. This man, from his posting history, was a solo day hiker. He hiked alone most of the time. He did off-trail bushwhacks at least every couple of months. He liked his coffee. He liked taking his dog on shorter hikes, but tended to leave the dog at home for the bigger off-trail days because the underbrush in the Cascades is rough on paws. He posted photos in good light, which suggests he was a morning starter. I think his day started around 5:30 in the morning. Maybe coffee at home, maybe a stop on the drive in. He probably reached the trailhead between 7 and 7:30. Mount Hood National Forest has dozens of access points, and based on the time of year, October, and the ground conditions you can sort of read in the footage, I'd guess somewhere on the eastern slope where the ponderosa starts to take over from the Douglas fir, and the underbrush thins out enough to make off-trail walking possible. He hiked for 2 to 3 hours before he stepped off the official trail. That's typical for the kind of bushwhack he liked to do. He probably had a vague destination in mind, a ridge, a meadow, a creek he'd seen on the topo. He moved at the steady, slow pace of someone who's done a lot of this kind of walking and isn't in a hurry. I think the first thing that changed was the sound. The Cascades in October are not a quiet forest. There are still birds, varied thrushes, pine siskins, the late-season chickadees. There is wind in the canopy. There are squirrels and chipmunks moving in the leaf litter. The background hum of a healthy forest in fall is constant if you're paying attention. That hum stops when something is nearby that doesn't belong. Birds go silent, small mammals go still. The forest holds its breath, and if you've spent enough time in it, you start to notice the silence before you notice anything else. I think he noticed the silence about a quarter mile before he noticed anything visual. He probably stopped walking. He probably looked around. He probably told himself it was nothing. A hawk overhead, a coyote downwind. And he started walking again, slightly more alert. I think he reached the clearing with the 2 close-grown trunks because it was the natural line through the underbrush. I don't think he was looking for it. I don't think he had any reason to look up. People don't look up in forests. You look at your feet, you look at the next obstacle, you look at the next tree you'll pass. The canopy is just texture overhead. But something made him look up. I don't know what. It might have been a sound, a single creak of bark or a soft exhalation he barely heard. It might have been the way the light shifted as the subject moved slightly. It might have been a feeling, the kind of feeling that you get when you know something is watching you and your body figures it out before your mind does. He looked up. He saw the face. His first thought, almost certainly, was that he was seeing a bear cub. Bears at that height in a Pacific Northwest tree in October are not unusual. He probably registered the height first, then the eyes, then the proportions. And somewhere in that sequence he realized that what he was looking at was not a bear. I think he hit record inside the first 5 seconds of seeing the face. The framing is rushed. The angle is slightly off-center. He filmed from where he was standing, didn't move closer or further, didn't reframe. The clip ends after 6 seconds with the creature still in frame. Not because anything happened, but because he stopped recording. He chose to stop. That's the behavior of someone who knew he had a window measured in seconds, not minutes, and who didn't want to push his luck for a second clip. After he stopped recording, I think he stood completely still for what felt to him like a long time, but was probably less than 30 seconds. I think he was waiting to see if the creature moved. I think the creature didn't. I think he then began to back away, slowly because he was a smart enough hiker to know not to run, but with the absolute certainty that he needed to be gone from that spot. I think he made it back to his truck and didn't speak the entire drive home. I think he showed the clip to his wife or his partner that evening, and I think she's a major reason the post came down within 72 hours. I think he posted it because his hands needed to do something with the information, and I think he regretted it before he was even out of bed the next morning. That's my read. None of it is verifiable. But I've talked to enough people who've had encounters and then regretted speaking publicly about them to recognize the pattern. Now let's talk about the biological side of this, because if we're going to take the footage seriously as a juvenile Sasquatch, we have to talk about whether a juvenile Sasquatch would be doing what this one is doing. The short answer is yes. Almost without question, yes. Every great ape on the planet has young that spend significant time in trees. Mountain gorilla infants, even though the adults are largely terrestrial, sleep in tree nests during their first year. Chimpanzee infants ride on their mothers in the canopy for months. Orangutan young essentially live in trees for the first 6 or 7 years of life. The pattern is so consistent across the great ape family that it would be biologically strange for a Sasquatch juvenile to not occupy trees in some part of its early life. If you watched my video a few months back on the juvenile Bigfoot evidence essay, this overlaps with some of that biology, but I'm coming at it from a different angle here. There, I was building the affirmative case across all the documented sightings. Here I'm asking one specific question. Why is this one young Sasquatch sitting in this one tree? The reasons are straightforward and ancient. Trees are safer than the ground for young primates. The list of things that can kill a juvenile primate on the ground is long. Terrestrial predators, larger conspecifics from outside the family group, accidents in dense underbrush. The list of things that can kill a juvenile primate at 30 feet up in a mature tree is much shorter. Birds of prey in some cases, falls in others, that's about it. For a juvenile Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest, the terrestrial predator list includes cougars, black bears, and occasional wolves. None of those climb to canopy height after small prey. A baby tucked into a tree fork is essentially unreachable to any local predator that isn't another large primate. There's another reason that comes up in the primate literature, which is what biologists sometimes call infant parking. Mothers in some species, orangutans most clearly, but the behavior shows up in other great apes too, will leave their young in a safe position while they forage in a nearby area. The young is told or signaled or simply trained to stay put. The mother returns within a few hours. The young waits. If we apply that pattern to Sasquatch, the footage makes perfect sense. The hiker stumbled onto a juvenile that had been parked in a tree while its mother foraged somewhere within a few hundred yards. The juvenile was doing exactly what its instincts told it to do. Stay still, stay quiet, stay high. The mother was doing exactly what her instincts told her to do. Keep moving, keep watching, keep food coming. The hiker in this read walked into a parenting moment. I personally think this is the most parsimonious explanation. It fits primate biology, it fits the footage, it fits the absence of an adult in the frame, and it fits the urgency with which the hiker chose to leave the area without trying to keep filming. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, but his instincts knew he should not stay long. The skeptical version of this section asks the obvious question. If juvenile Sasquatch are in trees this regularly, why aren't there more videos like this? My honest answer is that hikers don't look up. The canopy is invisible to most of us. We walk under it, around it, past it, but we don't search it. The hiker in this footage got the clip specifically because something, sound, or instinct, or the angle of the light made him do something hikers almost never do. He pointed his eyes at the sky. I've started doing this on my own hikes since I saw this footage, looking up, scanning the canopy, stopping where two trunks grow close together and just spending a minute looking into the fork. I haven't seen anything. But I think most people, including me before this footage, never gave the canopy a chance to show them anything. This is the part of the video where the footage gets darker for me. Not literally darker because the lighting in the clip is fine. Darker in what it implies. If there's a juvenile Sasquatch in that tree, the mother is within 100 yards. I want you to sit with that for a second because it's not a casual statement. There's no scenario in any great ape's behavioral playbook where a juvenile is left alone, unprotected in unfamiliar territory for any extended period. A juvenile in a tree fork is not abandoned. A juvenile in a tree fork is parked deliberately for a short interval by a mother who is somewhere within signaling distance. Mountain gorilla mothers will physically position their infants in safe spots while they feed in a different part of a clearing, but they don't go more than 50 meters away. Orangutan mothers leaving young in a nest typically stay within visual or auditory range. Chimpanzees rarely leave their infants at all in the first year. The pattern across the great ape family is that infants are always within recall distance of an adult. So while this hiker was standing under that tree, filming a small face peering down at him from the canopy, there was an adult Sasquatch, almost certainly a mother, somewhere on the ground within 100 yards, watching him, watching the tree, calculating. I don't know what she calculated. I know what she didn't do. She didn't approach. She didn't charge. She didn't make a sound. She let him keep filming, let him stand there for as long as he stood there, and let him walk away. Why? The most likely answer, and this is the answer that any primatologist would give you about any great ape, is that he didn't escalate. He didn't approach the tree. He didn't climb. He didn't make threatening sounds or gestures. He didn't draw a weapon. He recorded for 6 seconds and backed away. He read the situation perfectly without knowing he was reading it. I personally think this is the part of the story that the hiker himself eventually figured out. Maybe not that day, maybe not that week, but sometime in the days after he posted the footage while he was lying in bed at night thinking about what he'd seen, I think he understood. The mother was there. The mother let him leave. That realization, in my experience of talking to encounter witnesses, is one of the heaviest moments a person can carry. It's not a moment of triumph, it's a moment of understanding how close you came to something you didn't fully see. And it's a moment that tends to make people stop talking about the encounter. The footage isn't a wonder shot, it's a near miss. And I think on some level, the man who recorded it knew that before any of us did.
The hardest thing about this story isn't what's in the footage, it's the silence after. Because I've seen enough cases to know what kind of silence that is. It's not the silence of a hoaxer who got caught. It's the silence of a man who realized, maybe too late, what he had on that footage.
Let's talk about the disappearance from the internet, because this is the part where the story stops being a Bigfoot video and starts being something else. There are 4 explanations that I find plausible. I'll walk through them in order of how likely I think they are. Theory 1 is the simplest. He scared himself out of the conversation. He posted impulsively on the night of the encounter while the adrenaline was still moving through him. He woke up the next morning and read the replies and realized, with the kind of clarity that only sleep brings, that he had attached his real online identity to a Bigfoot video on a forum where his hiking friends knew him by name. He took the post down, he never logged back in. He's still out there hiking, living his life, occasionally remembering the clip and being glad he stopped talking when he did. This is probably the right answer. It accounts for almost everything we observe. It doesn't require a conspiracy. It doesn't require any external pressure. It just requires a man making a normal human decision about how much of himself he wants to expose to the internet. Theory 2 is that someone in his life pressured him to take it down. Spouse, partner, family member, employer. The footage went up, some of the replies started getting traction. The thread might have been about to go beyond the hiking forum, screenshots, cross posts, the slow grind of a small story starting to spread. Someone in his life looked at the situation and said, "Take it down. This is going to be a problem for us." He took it down. He stopped posting because every time he opened the app, he risked posting again. This is also plausible. Most of the encounter witnesses I've heard from over the years describe family pressure as the single biggest reason people don't speak publicly. The cost of being the Bigfoot guy in your social circle is real. The benefit of speaking up is mostly emotional. The math tips against speaking up almost every time. Theory 3 is that something happened to him personally. Illness, accident, depression. People go quiet online for 1,000 reasons that have nothing to do with the content they last posted. I want to acknowledge this possibility but not dwell on it, because I have no evidence either way, and speculating about a stranger's well-being on the internet is exactly the kind of thing I try not to do on this channel. Theory 4 is the one that gets the most YouTube engagement and that I'm the least certain about. Theory 4 says someone made him go silent. I want to be careful here. The history of federal agencies and cryptid evidence is more complicated than most people on either side of the conversation admit. The FBI did test hair samples submitted by Peter Byrne in 1976. That's a real, documented, declassified event. The Forest Service has, in scattered anecdotal reports, asked witnesses in specific areas to avoid stirring up media attention. Researchers with the North American Wood Ape Conservancy have publicly complained about a lack of cooperation from federal land management agencies. These things are real, but they are not the same as a coordinated cover-up. What I think is more likely in the Theory 4 bucket is something local rather than federal. The hiker stumbled into an area that for some reason somebody didn't want him publicizing. That somebody doesn't have to be a federal agency. It could be the operator of a marijuana grow operation, of which there are plenty on federal land in the Pacific Northwest. It could be someone running a research site that doesn't want hikers wandering through. It could be someone with their own reasons for caring about a specific patch of forest. Mount Hood is huge. Mount Hood contains all of those things and more. A phone call from a stranger telling you to take down a video is, in my experience, a much more effective censorship mechanism than anything a federal agency would do. And it leaves the kind of forensic trail we're actually seeing. The user deletes his own content, his account goes dormant, the footage disappears without any platform-level removal notice. I personally lean toward Theory 1. The simplest explanation usually wins, but I won't pretend Theory 4 doesn't keep me up some nights. Let me walk through what we can actually tell about how the post came down. The thread was visible for approximately 72 hours. During that window, it accumulated 30-something replies and an unknown number of views. The post was deleted, and the trip reports from the same user's posting history were also deleted in what looks like one cleaning pass. The user's account was not deleted, it went dormant. That pattern, keeping the account, deleting all content, is consistent with one specific behavior. It's what you do when you want to walk away from a piece of content without losing the username so that nobody else can register it and pretend to be you. People who delete their accounts entirely usually don't care about identity preservation. People who keep the account but scrub the content care a lot. It's also consistent with someone acting under pressure. If you want all of someone's content gone, but you don't want a conspicuous account deletion that draws attention, you have them keep the account and scrub everything inside it. The thread becomes a dead link. The user becomes a ghost. Nobody looking from the outside can tell whether the user is alive, dead, scared, or just bored. I want to mention something here without overstating it. Posts of this kind disappearing from cryptid adjacent forums is not unusual. The Marble Mountains area in Northern California has had at least 3 high-profile hiker reports over the past decade that were posted publicly and then scrubbed. The Skinwalker Ranch non-disclosure agreements are public record. The Sasquatch Genome Project samples that went missing during transit are documented. I'm not saying any of those things are connected to this footage. I'm saying the pattern of cryptid-related content disappearing after it gets traction is real, regardless of why it happens. The most likely explanation for this specific deletion remains the simplest one. The hiker took it down himself on his own initiative because he didn't want the footage associated with his name anymore. The rest is speculation. But the absence of certainty cuts both ways. If I can't prove it was pressure, I also can't prove it wasn't. I want to land this video honestly because I owe you that. This case is unverified. I want to say that out loud, plainly, before anything else. The footage cannot be authenticated. The hiker cannot be reached. The post is gone. The username is dormant. And every message I've sent has gone unanswered. There is no chain of custody. There is no second witness. There is no way to walk into Mount Hood National Forest and confirm a single detail of what I've just spent the last 50 minutes describing to you. All we have is what was left behind. A 6-second video clip saved before it was scrubbed. 4 sentences from a man who chose not to elaborate. A profile that went dormant the morning after it went up. The pattern of behavior surrounding the post, more than the post itself. What I've tried to do in this video is piece those fragments together, not prove anything. Piece them together, because piecing together is what's actually available to us with a case like this. The fragments either add up to something or they don't, and reasonable people are going to land in different places when they look at the same evidence. Here's what the fragments add up to for me. A man went hiking in October. He saw something at 30 feet up in a pine tree that he could not explain. He recorded a single short clip. He shared it with a small community, and then he disengaged from that community completely. The simplest version of that story is that he filmed something unusual, regretted attaching his name to it, and walked away. The more interesting versions involve a juvenile Sasquatch, a mother on the ground, and a man who survived a near miss without knowing it was a near miss. I can't tell you which version is true. I can tell you which one I lean toward, and I've leaned that direction throughout this video. But the case itself is unverified, and it will probably stay unverified. Somewhere in Mount Hood National Forest, if the footage shows what it appears to show, there is a juvenile Sasquatch that doesn't know its picture got out. And there is a mother who does, and there is a man with a hiking forum username who hasn't logged in for 3 months and who, if he's still out there somewhere reading this, knows exactly which video I'm talking about. If that's you, I'm not going to ask you to come back online. You made your choice and I respect it. But if you're willing to talk privately, my channel inbox is open. Nothing on the record, nothing public. For everyone else, if you hike Mount Hood or anywhere in the Cascades or anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, do me one small favor. Look up sometimes, stop where 2 trunks grow close together. Spend a minute looking into the fork. You probably won't see anything. Most of us never do. But the only footage that exists of juvenile Sasquatch comes from the handful of people who happen to point their eyes at the canopy instead of the trail. If you've seen something like this in any forest at any height, drop it in the comments. I read them, I track patterns, I take the careful witnesses seriously. And if you know who the original poster is, or if you recognize the username pattern, you can keep that to yourself. He's earned the silence.
That's where I have to leave this one. Footage nobody can verify, a high curve nobody can find, and the forest big enough to hide everything in it. If you want more cases like this one, cases that I can't quite let go of, but also can't fully verify, the channel's right here. And I'll need your help to make sense of all of this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.